Hello there, everybody, and welcome to Wednesday afternoon and your No More Mondays double shot of inspiration to get you through the week in the form of some midweek momentum. I am the host of No More Mondays podcast, Angie Callen. If you don't listen in on Mondays at 10 a.m. when we go live, I would love for you to tune in for a full episode with a guest. But these midweek momentums are an opportunity for me to dive into just some of my own opinions about what's happening on the societal front, in the modern work front, professional front, life front, kind of all the things that keep me going and make me tick and make me want to sound off. And so this week, I'm talking about something that I do really get fired up about, and it's human skills. A few weeks ago, I interviewed Ed, and he and I are both people first people. And we got into this discussion about human skills. And let me define what I mean by human skills, because over the years, we have heard all kinds of terms thrown around. The most prevalent are hard skills and soft skills. And I think the worst thing we ever could have done is label things like communication and empathy soft skills, because it gives it the illusion that they are less significant or less valuable than hard skills like being able to code. But here's the thing, we are moving into a new phase of the workforce. And what I like to talk about is this kind of like, what does the modern work look like? And I was having a discussion with somebody else who is going to be on the podcast in a few weeks. So there's a teaser today. And we were talking about this whole idea of how professionals kind of fear this idea of being displaced or being replaced by artificial intelligence, when really it's more of a displace. And there's a lot of forecasts and studies that show there actually will be jobs created by AI. It's just not apples to apples, right? Apples are going to need to become oranges, is really what we mean when we talk about being displaced, not replaced. And I don't mean that means that you need to go from being a creative writer to a hardcore Python coder overnight. But I do think it means that you really need to tune in to what makes you unique as a human, because hard skills are teachable, right? Things like coding, tool-based stuff, automations, engineering something, right? There's something that theoretically anyone can go to a classroom, go online and learn. But what we used to call as soft skills, I believe are human skills, and they are going to become more relevant and more valuable as hard skills start to become replaced by AI. And this is where this displacement comes from, right? Because we know that sitting online and scheduling social media is something that we can automate now instead of having a human do. However, the creation behind all of that needs to still be really human in order for people to connect to it. Because if all we do is create Sora videos, it's like, holy cow, I'm overwhelmed by fakeness, right? And so as we think about how to adapt, how to stay relevant, and how to stand out in the future of work, in my opinion, it really comes down to these human skills, which are things that no machine can replace. And in many cases are our innate capabilities as an individual. They're the things that do differentiate us from somebody else who has the same quote unquote hard skills. Think about stuff like judgment, discernment, decision-making capabilities, empathy, curiosity, the ability to communicate, to relate, to build rapport, contextual awareness are all things that we humans have that technology can't, and that separate us from somebody else who has the exact same hard skills. Because the way I communicate around problem solving, for instance, is different than somebody else who has a different background or has a different personality or different communication skills. And the reason this matters is because up until recently, and really until AI came on the scenes, we felt like soft skills were optional. And even in resume writing, we used to battle whether or not they should be in there. And I have always attested they are, because that is how you know that you're a cultural fit, or that somebody knows has an idea of who's walking in the door for an interview based on resume versus this like gobbledygook that no human wants to look at, right? But soft skills up until this point have sounded optional or secondary or almost kind of nice to have. But these skills are harder to train and learn. I used to have a friend who used to say, you can't teach enthusiasm. 100% accurate, right? Human skills are harder to replicate which means harder to displace and or replace. And that is why I think they are becoming more valuable. And we are going to see a rise in like EQ versus IQ. Years ago, I had, as AI started to hit the scene, I had an AI expert named Manoush Agrawal on the show. And I think we're going to have to re-release his episode because I've referred to it a lot lately. And he said something that at the time I thought, huh, and now I feel like was really profound. And he said, AI is actually going to increase our EQ because it brings the IQ. And as I have sat and I have adopted AI more and I've worked with more people trying to figure out how to navigate this ecosystem, and I've thought more about the human skills that separate us from AI, he was freaking spot on 2.5 years ago when Gen AI hit the mainstream scenes. And that is the very truth, is that it enhances our capabilities from an intelligence perspective, but because it doesn't have human potential and human context, it can only work within the confines of the data it knows, which is why we can leverage it to that end. But now we have the ability to go be more human in how we lead, how we delegate, how we influence, and also even to some extent the meaning behind our work. And so what I want you to know is this is not a hurry up, go learn AI or you're going to be out the door situation. I do fully believe that unless you're 3 to 5 years from retirement or less, you've got to be an AI enabled human on purpose. Notice AI enabled, not AI replaced, and human on purpose are in that sentence. Or else you won't be that apple who's trying to become the orange. However, I do think we can do so really intentionally and really leaning into what makes us different as an individual from other individuals, other human in the flesh individuals, and what makes us as humans different than the IQ data backed tools that we have to enable us, right? And so I'm going to give you a little food for thought over the next week. Is I want you to look at your world, in your professional world, your personal life, both, and ask yourself, are there places you're over indexing or under investing in your human capabilities of things like judgment and discernment? For instance, if you're using AI broad scope copy paste, you are using its intelligence without your EQ, right? And so you're not using your own judgment and discernment to take what it is giving you and think about how you want to put that out into the world or how you want to contextualize it, right? I also want you to think about where you're trying to optimize versus where you are trying to kind of maybe discern, and how can you both leverage AI and leverage AI and use your brain a little bit more purposefully and intentionally. Because I've definitely been seeing this idea that uh, AI is still so new. We're still kind of in this AI gold rush. And so it's really easy to get into a conversation with it and kind of over trust that it's giving you the whole story. And then you end up in a loop and it can't take you further. And that's because it has no more context to offer. And it is your human brain and your EQ and your discernment and your judgment that's got to come in and take that creativity or that idea over the finish line. On the flip side, I want you to look at your what we used to call soft skills that I am now calling human skills. And I want you to think about what you rely on most. And I want you to make sure you are intentionally developing it and leveraging it and not squandering it. So, for me, I am an idea generator. And so I can easily go into the abyss of ChatGPT and just pump it full of ideas that I half flesh out. So I have to be very careful to make sure I am carrying through and following through on the ideas that I allow it to help me support. And so this really ties back to this idea of being intentional, designing not just how we use technology, but how we're using it to progress our careers, progress our lives, be intentional with our work, and lead as the human in this very changing world. And so what I want to remind you this week, no matter how frustrated you are with a job search or work or adopting things or your team, is that the future of work is not about becoming more technical or more AI savvy. It's about becoming more intentional, more discerning, and stronger in your human skills. Because as you know, and I know, humans still matter, and that starts with you.